You point your phone at the sky, tap one button, and 30 seconds later, a galaxy is sitting right there on the screen. Real color, real shape. The kind of thing your grandparents needed a mountaintop and a freezing night to catch even a glimpse of. Here's the weird part. That same trick costs $300 in one box and $3,000 in another. One tap either way. Same weight, same galaxy. So one of these is quietly robbing you, and by the end of this, you'll know which one. Quick thing before we get into it, if backyard astronomy is your kind of rabbit hole, hit subscribe. I test this gear so you don't burn money finding out the hard way. I did the boring thing. Set both up in my backyard on the same clear night. Same target list, same phone, same patch of half-decent dark sky about 40 minutes outside the city. And look, I figured the $3,000 scope would bury the cheap one. It didn't. The gap was real, but it showed up somewhere completely different from what the guy at the shop swore up and down. Let me walk you through what actually happened. Start with the sensor, because the sensor is the whole ball game. Everything else is packaging. The cheap scope runs a tiny chip, roughly the grade you would find in a mid-range phone camera, and it grabs a little postage stamp slice of sky. The expensive one has a physically bigger sensor, and it is cooled. There is a small fan and a cooling element keeping the chip cold, so it does not build up heat noise during long exposures. On a spec sheet that reads like nerd trivia. Then I pointed both at the Orion Nebula. On the little sensor, Orion looked like a soft gray cloud with a bright middle. Pretty. Recognizable. On the cooled sensor, the same nebula had guts to it. The wispy edges, the dark lanes cutting through. That faint pink you only get when the chip sits there quietly soaking up light instead of cooking itself. That is not the app being smarter. That is the hardware seeing more. Then there's the number nobody wants to talk about, and it decides everything. Aperture, the width of the lens. The $300 scope has about a 50mm opening. The $3,000 one is closer to 90. Sounds like a small jump on paper. It isn't. Light collection scales with the area of that opening, so going from 50 to 90mm doesn't give you a little more light. It gives you roughly 3 times more light hitting your sensor every single second. And no software patch fixes that. Ever. You cannot code your way to photons that never came through the glass. This is the difference between a fuzzy smudge you're pretty sure is a spiral galaxy and an image where you can trace the arms curling out of the core. The little scope tries. It stacks, it sharpens, it does its best. But it's working with a sliver of the light, and it shows. Okay, now the part the expensive scope crowd would rather I leave out. The cheap one wins. Not everywhere, but in the places most people actually care about, it wins clean. The moon? Both scopes turn the moon into a crater-covered wall of detail, and honestly, I couldn't tell you which clip came from which. Saturn's rings, Jupiter's stripes, a bright cluster like the Pleiades, the $300 box handles most of that shockingly well. I showed a few clips to friends and asked them to guess the price. They guessed wrong about half the time. That's what a coin flip looks like. If your dream is standing in the driveway showing your kids Saturn's rings live, right now, the cheap scope does 90% of that job for a tenth of the money. That's not a compromise. That's just true. Both scopes lean on the same core trick, and it's worth knowing, because it's where the marketing gets slippery. Neither one takes a single photo. They fire off hundreds of short frames, layer them on top of each other, toss the blurry ones, and average the good ones into one clean image. It is called stacking, and it is the only reason a tiny scope produces anything usable at all. Here's where your money actually shows up, though. The pricey scope stacks faster. Its tracking is steadier, so it drops fewer frames and more of what it grabs survives to the final picture. And if you ever get serious, it lets you export the raw stacked data. The cheap one hands you a finished JPEG inside its app, and that's the end of it. You get what the software decided you get. On the expensive one, you can pull the raw file out and process it yourself later, once you've learned more and want a better result from the same night's data. Now, the costs the shelf box conveniently forgets to print. The cheap scope's mount drifts. Over a long session, it slowly slides off target, and you're recentering every few minutes, which gets old quick. Its battery tapped out way sooner in the cold. And cold is exactly when the sky is clearest, so that's a nasty little joke. Some of these budget units also lock their best targets behind a subscription app. Want the good galaxies in the catalog? That's a monthly fee printed nowhere on the box. Oh, and the tripod. The bargain scope shipped with legs so flimsy they flexed in a light breeze, so I bought a sturdier one, which quietly ate a chunk of the money I thought I'd saved. The $3,000 scope isn't free of extras either, but it shows up ready to work, and that counts for a lot at 11 at night when your fingers are numb. So who's each one for? Let me just say it straight. If you're backyard curious, you want to see real things, show the family, catch that little jolt of, wait, that's an actual galaxy, the $300 scope is plenty. It'll hand you that feeling every clear night. If you live in an apartment under heavy city glow, honestly, the gap between the two shrinks anyway, because the streetlight haze hurts both of them and the expensive scope's extra light gathering gets half-wasted fighting that orange sky. Save your money there. But if you're the person chasing deep sky shots worth printing and framing, images with faint detail and real color that hold up when you blow them up big, the bigger sensor, the cooling, the wider glass, the raw export, that's what you're paying for. And it's a genuinely better tool. And that word is the whole thing, tool. The $3,000 scope is the better tool. I won't pretend otherwise. But most people asking this don't actually need a better tool. They need to answer a different question first, and it's an honest one. Will you still be pointing this thing at the sky in 2 years? The graveyard of expensive hobby gear is stuffed with stuff that got used 4 times and then moved into a closet. Drop $3,000, watch the novelty fade by spring, and that was the real waste, not the cheap scope you'd have actually kept reaching for. And if you buy the $300 box, fall hard, and outgrow it in 18 months, that little scope did its whole job. It turned you into someone who's earned the big one. Either way, you find out for 1/10 of the risk. So which number is the real waste of money comes down to a person the salesman never asks about. You, 2 years from now. Drop a comment and tell me which one you'd buy and be honest about why. I'm genuinely curious how many of you already know you're the closet type. And if this saved you from a bad buy, do me one favor and subscribe. The next one's already in the works.